Take heart, my friend, we'll go together this uncertain road that lies ahead.
John, the Gospel of John, chapter 1, and I'm going to read the verses we're going to cover, John 1, verses 6 through 11. John 1, verses 6 through 11. I read out of the NASB, the New American Standard, and it goes like this. There came a man sent from God, whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify about the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. There was the true light, which coming into the world enlightens every man. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and those who were his own did not receive him. So we have this few verses that we're going to cover. And what we have here is God committing himself to communicating with us. And communicating what we really, really need. You know, one of the most difficult things is to convince people that they need the Lord. Now, in some general sense, we all know that. And when you confront people, oh, yeah, the Lord, oh, yeah, the Lord. But then how we actually live shows that we really are not turning to the Lord. We're turning to our own devices. Because we figure that we're going to manipulate, that we're going to make things work out the way we think they ought to work out. You know? And especially when we have a lot of resources. I think that's one of the reasons why Jesus said it is easier for a camel, a big camel, to go through the eye of a needle, you know, a needle, and you have the eye to thread, right, to thread through. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. Why? Because people that have everything, who needs God? Oh, yeah, we'll acknowledge Him every once in a while, but it's very hard now. It doesn't have to be that people are rich with money. They might have riches in terms of looks, position, knowledge. They might have all kinds of things that they depend on. It may not be money at all. I've known some of the poorest people in this planet that are full of arrogance and pride. I have interacted with them myself. So it has really nothing to do with money. But to convince people that they need the Lord is one of the hardest things to do. It really is. Especially when those people are religious even. People can be very religious and still not really be trusting the Lord. They can quote you the Bible, they can do all kinds of things, but they're really not trusting the Lord. In Revelation 3, I don't know how many times I've quoted this verse. And I think the reason is because I think it's so apropos to where we are in the richest nation in the world, the United States. And we are a superpower, if not the superpower of the world. And we are very rich, relatively speaking. Most of the people in the world do not make hardly any money. And so for us, it is especially a danger to not sense the need for the Lord. In Revelation 3, in verse 17, the Lord is talking to the church in Laodicea, one of the 7 churches in Asia Minor, back then. It says here, well, I'll start in verse 15. Revelation chapter 3. In verse 15, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. So because you say, because you are lukewarm and neither hot or cold, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. And here's the problem. Verse 17. Because you say, I am rich and have become wealthy and have need of nothing, and you do not know that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. Wow. The people were, I don't have any needs. I got everything. And if I don't have anything, I can manipulate and get my way. So who needs God? And it's very hard to convince people that they really, really need the Lord. They're in desperate need of the Lord. And it would be an experience almost 2,000 years ago. I mean, when John wrote Revelation. And nowadays, you start talking to people about their need for the Lord. How do they react? Get angry? Look at you like, what? Well, yeah, but not really a desperation where like, oh my goodness, if God doesn't come through, forget it. No, we got this. We got this. I can complain, I can bellyache, and I get my way. And it's very sad. Or I have the money to get what I want. Now, it can get very subtle in how we don't trust the Lord. It can be very subtle, but it's there. And what we have here in John 1, the few verses that we read, John 1 verses 6 through 11, is that God commits himself to communicating with us and communicate exactly what we need, not what we think we need, but what we really, really need. He gives light to us who are blind and unfriendly to him. The world is really unfriendly to God. We might think that there's all these religions and so forth, but it's really for self. But we don't see it. And God commits himself to communicating and giving light to the blind and unfriendly people. What we have in verses 6 through 8 is God's witness. God's witness, and that says a lot there about God's methods. Okay? How does God work? And if you understand that, then your life can change. Okay? And I'll say more about that. And then verses 9 through 11, why a witness? Why do we need a witness? You see? So first of all, God's witness. Go back again to verse 6. Now, if you remember, the verses before that, what have we learned? We have learned that Jesus Christ is the Logos, the all-encompassing answer to the whole world, to the whole universe. And that he is the source and sustainer of all of life. It's not a husband, it's not a wife, it's not money, it's not even health. It's Jesus Christ. And he created everything and he sustains everything. He's the source of life. That's what we found out in the previous verses. And he's the eternal God. He was here before creation. That's what we have learned now. We pick it up in verse 6 and he says that he sent a witness, right? And there when he says, there came, the word there came into being. And why do I say that? Because that's distinguished from the Logos, who always was. Okay? It's the same word when it says everything that came into being is the same word that's used in verse 6. Now, there came into being a man sent from God. In the introduction to the gospel, we mentioned that the word sent, S-E-N-T, in the Gospel of John signifies the pulsating love of God. This is the heart of God. So when it says here, there came into being a man sent from God. This was God's love. He sent, right? But this was a man. And this now tells us the method by which God works. He works through mankind, you and me. You see? And he chooses to do that. And he was sent from God, also distinguishing because the Logos was with God. The Logos came from the very presence of God. This man was sent from God. In other words, God ordered him to go. You see, he didn't come from the very presence of God like the Logos. And a lot of distinctions here that need to be very careful, and we'll see why they need to be distinguished. So a man came, sent from God, whose name was John. You know what John means? A gift from God. John means a gift from God. So, here it is. John, sent from God, whose name is love. Amazing, no? A gift from God. He's committed to communicating. God is committed to communicating and communicating love. And you and I need to know that because we miss out. How do we miss out? Well, we turn to all kinds of resources other than Christ. Now he says, again, he sent this witness, whose name was John. And he came as a witness to testify about the light. A witness there are two things about a witness. He goes to verify the truth or tell the truth. Okay, hey, here's the truth, right? This and this and this. Okay, well, who's witness to that? And somebody has to, if they raise their hand, hey, I can testify to the truth, right? But also, if somebody's going to testify, what are they doing? They are also committing themselves. How many of us have been in a position of, well, I can speak the truth, but man, I'm going to get myself in trouble. You see? Right? In relatives, with in-laws, with siblings. I don't know if I want to say that. But once you say, I'm going to speak, you're committing yourself. Right? So here John was committing himself as a witness. So God had committed himself to communicate. John the Baptist had committed himself to communicate the truth. You see? So that's what we have here. Witness, it says, about the light. So, and what was the purpose? So that all men might believe through him. That was the purpose. I'm going to testify so that people will believe. And God is using a human being. That should tell you and me our purpose in life as well. You see, we are to be witnesses of the truth. God uses you and me. God uses human beings to testify of the light. And we already said the light is the life of men. Continuing on, now verse 8. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. Now, why does he have to do that? Why does he have to say that? Because John the Baptist was a pretty powerful man. Very special, and so people can begin to say more and 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 more about John the Baptist. Now, wait. He wasn't the true light. He wasn't the light. He was a light. But the real light that gives life is the Logos, not John the Baptist. And we all tend to idolize people rather than focusing on the Lord Jesus. And so right off the bat, God is saying, be careful. John the Baptist, as great as he wasn't the real light, the true light. He came to bear witness of the light. So many things here that we need to think about so that we walk appropriately in life. You see? So that was the witness. He was used of God, a gift from God, signifying the love of God. Now, he wasn't the real one. John the Baptist was saying, wait a minute, Jesus is the one. Jesus is the one. Jesus is the one. And you and I need to be doing the same to people, right? I'm not your Savior. I'm powerless, actually. You need Jesus. You need Jesus, you see. And as a pastor, I know for me, that truth has delivered me from so much. So much. People need Jesus. They do not need Pastor Ruben. They need Jesus, you see. Well, why do they need Jesus? Why do they need Jesus? Verse 9. There was the true light, which coming into the world, and the word there, coming into the world, is a certain type of verb. He was already actually, from before he was born into a flesh, he was already coming. The truth has already been shining in the Old Testament, right? It's just getting brighter and brighter and brighter, and boom! The sun, the massive S-U-N, S-O-N, all of a sudden appears, right? But he was already coming in the Old Testament. There was already light. Psalm 19, for instance. Truth comes, they speak. The heavens declare the glory of God, you see. And so the verb here, in verse 9, there was the true light which was coming into the world. And the world is repeated 3 times in this verse, and every time in the original, it's first, at the very beginning of the phrase. The world, the world, the world. So we need to understand, what is this world? Well, the Greeks, as we've already kind of mentioned in the first message, maybe the second, that the Greeks saw this all-encompassing order, answer to everything, how everything works, you see. But it was kind of like a naturalistic view where the world is all there is, the cosmos, the universe. There's nothing outside it, you see. The world. And there is an all-encompassing principle, right, that makes the world function. Only we know that principle to be a person, you see. But the world then in the Old Testament, the Jews saw the world as not distinguished from God. And the world is always dependent upon God. See, everything that works is God ordained and God dependent. The Jews saw it that way, you see. But it also included all the inhabitants, all the people. And what we find here is that the world is not just the residents, the inhabitants. It also are those that oppose God. The world that resists God. And every time in this verse, the world comes first. So that's what John is saying. What about this world? Okay? This world, there was a true light which coming into the world enlightens every man. We already know he's the one that gives us light, life. He was in the world. He came into the world that he made. He was in the presence. He became a human being, right? I mean, he made the world, but he came into the world. And the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. And the word there seems to be the world resisted or rejected him when he was here, even though he had made everything. Isn't that astonishing? He made the whole thing, and he came into the presence of humanity, and humanity resisted him, or at least failed to recognize the creator of all. And then it gets even worse, because it's not just human beings in general. Now he says he came unto his own, the Jews. the particular special people, so to speak, of God. He came into his own, and his own did not receive him. Wow. Now do you see why we need a witness? And it is very hard, because the heart of men, of mankind, resists the truth. To convince someone that they really, really, desperately need God, it's very hard to do, especially in our place, when there is so much that's being offered, and so easy to get, so easy to obtain many things. Excuse me, some people have to work days and days to get one meal, 2 meals. I mean, we're spoiled rotten, man, I'm telling you. And I don't mean that to come down on you. I'm the same. I mean, for some people to go watch one TV show, it's a whole process. And we're spoiled rotten. Some people are what do they call? Dumpster diving for food. They literally go to the trash cans. And we're, oh my goodness, what kind of cheese do you want? Not that one. I want smoked Gouda cheese. What? And so we need these witnesses to come and tell us about the truth and the world. Even though Jesus Christ, not just any, ignorant drunkard of a man. No, Jesus, more knowledgeable than all the geniuses of the whole world put together. Jesus was present. They did not know him. They did not receive him. So what are you and I up against? If they did not receive Jesus, that's how hard humanity is. That's how hard the world is. In fact, later in the Gospel of John, we're told that the Holy Spirit is the one that has to convince men, because it is an impossibility. That's how hard it is. And I see it over the years as a pastor, to convince people of the truth and to live by the truth. It's agonizing. I was at the bookstore the other day, and this guy, I don't know, I guess he was aspiring to be a pastor. I don't know what. He, can I help you and so forth? And I think I mentioned this, and he showed me and said, oh, what do you do? He asked me, well, I'm a pastor. You're a pastor? Oh, how long have you been? 25 years or so. Wow, how has it been? And he wanted to maybe become a pastor or whatever. And I said, well, it's been a glorious pain. It's like, glorious pain. Wow. But that's the way it's been. It's so awesome to see the hand of God work in the lives of people. And a number of you have seen the work of God, and it's just awesome. It's glorious. But some of you know how much pain it's been. It's painful, because we all make choices that we end up hurting ourselves, other people, and the glory of God. But there it is. It's John came. The world had the presence of the true light. The world was made by the true light. The world did not know the true light. In fact, his own people did not receive him. So we find out that God uses human beings. And in that using of the human beings, he loves the world, right? And we all know that the ultimate human being is Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he sent. S-E-N-T. He sent. So Jesus Christ is the pulsating, real, concrete fleshly, body love of God. And so we're going to look at that a little bit more in a minute. So, what are we to do? Well, God sent John the Baptist. He decides to work through human beings. John the Baptist wasn't the true light. He wasn't the light. Jesus Christ was the true light. But John came as a witness, and you and I are called to be witnesses. You and I are called to be witnesses. It's amazing to me how many people are so lost. And I don't mean so much financially or even educationally. You can just about Google anything and you find out knowledge, right? It's not about head knowledge, but about a relationship with God and purpose in life. Purpose in life. I don't know the latest movies that I've seen. Sometimes there's a hopelessness because people are like, I worked for all this and I got it, but now I feel empty. There's nothing to life. And our young people, especially when they've been given new cars, I don't want that. And, they're like, no. Now, some of them, of course, get hooked and they want more and more and more and more and more and more. But I'm surprised, just like people are so lost. No purpose in life. What are we living for? Well, to get a degree, to make more money, to be able to do this, to be able to do that. It's like, really? That's it? The real purpose in living life is to represent God, to live for Him. Because He's the source of life. Not anything else or anyone else. That's our purpose in life. And when we live according to that purpose, now we've got motivation in life. We've got someone to live for. And when we don't have that, we get lost and end up empty. So, here's something. When you and I share the gospel, we're sharing the love of God. We're sharing the love of God. Isn't that an awesome thing? I mean, we can give money to people, we can give them food, but how is that compared to the love of God? Now, to be sure, sometimes when we give food or money or help somebody, that's part of it, right? But compared to the gospel, when we bear witness of Jesus as the Savior, we are being John. What does John mean? A gift of God. When we share the gospel, we are being a gift of God to that individual. Just think of that, brothers and sisters. We buy things for people. We send them letters, flowers, many other things, right? We buy for people. That's an expression of love, and rightly so. Especially when somebody is in deep need, a relative in jail. We write a letter carefully. Somebody's in the hospital, we send them flowers or something. A letter because we want to express the love. When we share the gospel, we're sharing God's gift 1,000 million more times more worthy, more worth than any flower or anything. We are being John the Baptist, a witness to the true light. That's what we find in this passage. So, obviously, share the gospel is the application. Be a John the Baptist. We get in contact with the purpose for why we're here on earth. Everything else ends up empty if we don't have Jesus in our mind as we live life. Now we have to pay bills. We have to live life and do business and carry on. But we must keep that clear in our minds. Our purpose for being here is for sharing the gospel, sharing the love of God. You see. What should be a corresponding response to God's salvation? When we understand that, it should be astonishment. Astonishment because, why? We're just like the world. We don't know Jesus. We resist. We don't receive. And God keeps at it, and keeps at it, and keeps at it, and then we receive. And then we can begin to grow. It is an astonishment. I mean, how many of you, after somebody has rejected you or said no, you keep going? The very little thing, forget it, unless we're desperate and we keep being abused. Some people keep doing that, right? Oh, I love my husband. He beats me up. He's all this. Oh, I love my husband. No, you don't. You need him. You're looking to him instead of the Lord. That's why you keep doing this. But most of us, when we even a little sense that we're not being liked, forget it. God says, I know you resist me. I know you don't know me, but I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep sending my word that we even believe to begin with. It's astonishing. We can be rendered speechless when we understand that God kept coming and coming and coming and being blind. Not just blind, being enemies of God. But you see, we don't see that. We don't see that. Because we're working hard and we're working hard and we're working hard. What do you mean I'm an enemy of God? We don't trust him. When we keep on doing our own thing, we become enemies of God. And he keeps giving light and giving grace. And then when we trust, listen to this. When we trust in Jesus, God declares us righteous. Oh, really? God declares us righteous? Astonishing. You know? Wow. The salvation of God. So, a response should be worship of God. Worship of God. Sometimes I have to ask myself, why am I not on the floor? Why am I not in love with God? Because of my own blindness? Because of my faulty values? Because of my perspectives? Because of my idols? All kinds of reasons why I'm not in love with God. And brothers and sisters, we're all there at some level or another. You know, I'm there too. But when I admit that, all the more why I'm astonished that I'm saved. All the more I'm dumbfounded that God will still use me. Yes. Even though I don't love him. I'm not in love with him most of the time. Unbelievable. So it calls for worship of God. Worship of God. And then finally, we need to decide that we're going to love. In John 13 and verse 34, by this the world will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. That's how we're going to represent God. To love one another. But to love, it's not the ooey gooey, ooh, I feel good around you. It can be that. But love is to keep doing what is right. To keep giving and giving. Not because I need you to appreciate me. I need for you to see how great I am. No. No. Love because look at the love of God towards me. If you reject me, I'm going to be okay. It'll hurt. But it's going to be okay. Because I'm coming out of a full cup. I'm not coming out of neediness. So I need to keep loving. Now, how especially are we going to love? Remember the word S-E-N-T? Sent. What does it mean? It is the pulsating love, concrete love of God. John 17 and verse 18. That should kind of be easy to remember, right? John 17, 18. Here it is, for you and for me. John 17, 18. And here's Jesus talking to the Father. Right? Here's Jesus Christ, God the Son, talking to God the Father. John 17, 18. As you, Jesus talking to the Father, as you, Father, sent me, and what does that mean? I am the very expression of your love. As you sent me into the world, I also have sent them into the world. Practice love. Practice love. And what does that mean? Share the gospel. Be the eyes and hands of Jesus Christ. Just like God the Father sent the Son as the expression of His love, now Jesus as the expression of His love towards the world sends us. Not a love for the world in the sense of the material goods, right? 1 John chapter 2. The love of the world means we'll be enemies of God. Not that love for the world, but love for the inhabitants, the people. And to be able to speak to them about the gospel. To represent God to them, represent Jesus Christ to them. Brothers and sisters, there's no greater motivation when we understand our purpose in life. All the careers and all the other schemes, all the other travels and all the other things that we want in life, that we can do in life. And they don't have to be bad, they can be good. Travel, vacations, all those are good things. Only when we start living for them, we're no longer living according to the purpose that we were created for. You see? And they leave us empty, of no value. But when we live according to God's purposes, oh, we've got someone to live for. You see? And that makes all the difference in the world. All the difference in the world for living life. Especially the young people. You young people that are here, listen. Start early living for Christ. Start early valuing who He is and what you're here on earth for. Some of us older folks have said, you know, we've wasted time. We have wasted time because we've lived for material garbage instead of living for the Son of God. That's our purpose for living here. Reflecting Him, living for Him.
Take heart, my friend. We'll go together this uncertain road that lies ahead. Our faithful God has always gone before